Well, first of all, let me say good morning. You'll notice that the title of today's lessons is Reverend Bob Answers Your Questions. So I had a few questions here submitted ahead of time. I'll go ahead and tackle those, but if you've got questions that you want to ask on whatever subject, you should have received a small blank piece of paper when you came in. Just go ahead and write down the question on that piece of paper, and I know it's a little tight in the aisles, so if you do have a question you want to write out, just go ahead and pass it to the end of the aisle or whoever is closest to the end, and then if you'll bring it down here to Matty will collect them, and then we'll dive into those as we go along. So if you've got a question, just make sure you write it down on a piece of paper, pass it to the ends, and whoever's on the end, if you'd be willing to come down and give it to Matty here on the front row, I'd appreciate that. So, in looking over some of the questions submitted ahead of time, one of them was, I watch the news and see such horrible things happening. You know, it's one thing to say change your world by changing your consciousness, but how is it possible for someone who is facing extreme hardship supposed to help themselves? If we accept the premise that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, then everything that does happen in the world gives us an opportunity to decide what we want to focus on, what we want to expand. So when something does happen in our world, it gives us an opportunity to decide, is this what I want to be, or is this not what I want to be? You know, is this me, or is this not me? And as we make that decision, we decide how we want to proceed there. For an example, I find that when these things happen, my heart just opens in compassion. And that scares a lot of people, because if you open your heart in compassion, you feel like you need to do everything and save everybody in the world. What we can do, though, is just follow our guidance as to what is ours to do. It might be making a donation to a group that, say, helps in whatever cause it is that you have compassion for. You may feel guided to get involved personally yourself. I mean, one of the great examples of that, of course, is Mother Teresa in India. She made it her mission to go and serve these people. But for you, it's just a matter of figuring out what it is that is yours to do. What gifts, what passions, what talents do you have in making this world a better place? And then being careful not to get too caught up in the outer appearances, but recognize that this has a chance to allow us to define ourselves on a daily basis. One question is, what's the difference between God's laws and human laws? It seems that human laws are designed to help the rich to the detriment of the middle class and poor. I could go on a couple of hours about this. God's laws, the difference between God's laws and human laws, there are spiritual laws. There's, as I've talked many times, there's the absolute and then there's the relative. The absolute is that realm of God, the spiritual nature that never changes, spiritual laws that never changes. They are the same 2,000 years ago as they are now. This relative world we live in, though, there's a lot of temporality, there's a lot of evolution as the human race consciousness gets better and better, and sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But we do live in an interesting time. There seems to be like an 80-year cycle to the human race experience. 80 years ago we were experiencing the Great Depression, and right now, we're in a place now where we're struggling because there is such inequality. And when you have the kind of spiritual, or I should say financial inequality between the very rich and the poor, especially in a society like ours where the expectation is that anybody can make it, that leads to a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, a lot of just despair, which is why we're having such a rash of shootings and the like, in our cities. So, it's up to us to, like I was just describing before, decide what is ours to do and what is ours not to do. We do live in a democratic republic, and even though with Citizens United and so many other things that have happened that have allowed some of the sociopathic wealthy to control politics, we have a choice. We have a congressional election coming up in November where we can choose to vote for people who truly do want to carry out our values. I could certainly dig into this a lot deeper, but I tell you what, my email address is on the back of your bulletin. If you send me if you send me a quick email, I'll be glad to send you a couple articles I've got on this. Okay, why does love hurt so much sometimes? Because we expect something in return. If whatever we give lovingly and unconditionally will come back to us 100-fold. And loving unconditionally is a very challenging thing to have happen in our world. Seems like most of us want some conditions attached to it. Okay, let's see what we got here. Can affirmative prayer change others you pray for? What affirmative prayer can do is it can change your perception of that other person. One of the things that I recognize as mine to do is to truly see the Christ in every one of you. So when you put out an affirmative prayer, it should be for that highest good to unfold for the person. In fact, I think, when I did the meditation here this morning, I did, we see the divine perfection in and expressing through each of these prayer requests as their highest good, today and every day hereafter. Now, from a very practical standpoint, say you've got someone who's immersed in substance abuse or something like that, what I will do is I'll pray to have that person embrace the divine idea of health. Or if you know something about the background, just have them embrace that divine idea of wholeness. See them embracing that rather than seeing them change, so to speak. Allow them to come towards the light of spirit. How do you picture our life after death? Well, unity does not teach this as creed, but it does seem the majority of people do feel like there is reincarnation. And I know for me, back in Chicago about 20 years ago, I went through a workshop where we did some past life regression, and I had a chance to dip into a few previous lifetimes that I lived, all kind of very interesting. One that I was female, another one in which I was very depressed because my wife and children had died. It was like in the Middle Ages, and a minister took me in and made me the caretaker of the church. So you see, it's in my DNA. So as far as life after death, I think what does happen, and this is my belief, is that after we do pass away, we have an opportunity to really kind of evaluate what we experienced in this particular lifetime. I think we come into each lifetime with an opportunity to learn particular lessons, teach particular lessons, to have a particular experience. There are some people that believe that we come back time and time again because we want to experience everything. We want to experience male, female. We want to experience rich, poor. We want to experience wellness and illness. We want to experience straight and gay. And we want to experience hot and cold. So we come back into these various lifetimes to experience all of these things. Why is everybody sitting so far apart? Well, they're sitting so far apart because, in 2 weeks everybody's going to invite their friends, and suddenly we'll have, say 400 people here, and you won't be able to sit so far apart. I'm not quite sure why people sit so far apart, other than just that sense that, we all kind of have that comfort zone or safety zone around us. There are certain people we readily allow into that comfort zone, usually someone who's someone who's giving as close to unconditional love as you've experienced so far. Let's please alternate between different versions of the Lord's Prayer. We have suggested it in the past, but it hasn't changed. This doesn't sound like a question to me. Actually, I know, we have talked. Okay. So now, I know we've talked with Michael Davis about it. We vary it up a little bit. Part of the challenge is the old traditional one that's been sung in so many of the mainline churches was actually designed as a solo for soprano. And so when people sing that, you find that about half of the room has to check out about halfway up the scale. There are several different versions, including one that's actually written to Old Lang Syne, which I think we tried a couple of years ago. And then there's the one that we've been using, the Echo Prayer, that I've gotten the best feedback on. But there are some people I know that miss some of the other versions of the Lord's Prayer. So, and I know Michael has slipped some of those in from time to time, and I know at the All Music service I know we did. So. Okay, let's see here. I have a prayer request here, so I'm going to hold that in confidence. Would it be possible to sing more songs from the hymnal? We have such beautiful hymns. That's another one where it depends upon who we want to attract. If indeed we're trying to attract a newer crowd, so to speak, using a hymnal from the 1950s might not be the best way to do that. I know we occasionally use some songs from the hymnal, but we did today, as a matter of fact. Yeah. So it's just a matter of we try to mix it up as much as we can. But here again, if we want to attract a broader spectrum of people who resonate with our message, we've got to be willing to accept a broader spectrum of music to go with those people. What is the spiritually correct way to deal with panhandlers? How do I know they won't use the money for drugs or alcohol? Well, the spiritually correct way to deal with panhandlers is to follow your inner guidance. Frankly, sometimes I give, sometimes I don't give, but it is, and I know when Carl and I were going to Unity in Chicago, back in the 1980s, it was interesting how we did see panhandlers show up outside churches. Panhandlers are smart people. They know that when you're coming out of church, you're ready to give. So that's just the way I do it. I've shared a story at least once before about how before I became a minister and I was working in Chicago, I was walking down the street at one point and I saw, with my peripheral vision, a man in an alley. He was homeless, but he wasn't trying to make himself known. And I just got this very strong intuitive feeling that I needed to go back and give him $1. And at first I started to reason that I shouldn't do it, but it was just this real strong intuitive feeling. So I went back and gave the guy $1. And he kind of looked at me like, he was in shock. It's like, why did I walk, 20 feet into the alley and give him $1? But I did. And then there are other times that, not so much. So follow your inner guidance. You know whether it's yours or not to give. Thank you. Okay, gotcha. Another prayer request here. What is meant by the metaphysical interpretation of Scripture? I know I don't use the word metaphysical as much as perhaps I should. It was the name given to the study of symbolism in the Bible. So I usually talk about Bible symbolism rather than metaphysics. But metaphysics is that approach of looking beyond the physical or the literal of the Bible to see what the deeper spiritual message is. How does one know when it's God speaking to them rather than one's ego? The guidance that I use is if it's a loving, nurturing intuition or inner voice, depending upon your personality type, that is generally love or spirit or God guiding you. If it is angry, if it is demeaning, if it is belittling, it's probably just your own past experience trying to heal itself. The ego has this aspect of that it feels threatened. It feels that if you become totally one with spirit, that somehow that individuality that you came into this world to express will be erased, when actually just the opposite happens. How can we pick and choose what to believe from the Bible? Why don't we follow what the Bible says? Well, the Bible is actually a collection of 66 books written over about 800 years. Most of the people who wrote one of these books of the Bible had no idea it was going to be thrown in with these other books. Many of the books contradict each other. Some were actually put in the Bible because it was a counterpoint or a rebuttal to another book in the Bible. Even among the four Gospels that talk about the life of Jesus, there are contradictions. The Gospel of John says Jesus was crucified on Thursday. The other three say he was crucified on Friday. So to take the Bible literally would be to act as a schizophrenic. It just doesn't work. And that's why we really need to understand the spiritual messages that we're trying to be talked about by various authors. And that includes understanding who wrote the book, at what time period, why they were writing the book, and for what audience, even if we don't know who the authors are. And what I have found is that we can put aside all of that stuff. When you do understand the symbolism, it's a timeless message, something that is just as important now in 2014 as it was, say, in the year 30 AD. A lot of questions about the nature of Jesus Christ. You know, we feel that Jesus Christ was indeed divine, but not exclusively Jesus Christ was divine. We feel like Jesus was trying to teach us that we too have that spark of divinity within us that we can allow to be expressed through us, using our gifts, our passions, our talents. Jesus gives us an example of someone who has taken that to the fullest, but even he couldn't express it consistently. I mean, he got angry at the temple, if we take that literally. There's one wonderful spiritual message in there about him getting angry and tossing the tables, him expressing doubt in the Garden of Gethsemane, being scared when he's being crucified. But it allows us to see, by following his teachings, how we too can live as spiritual beings having a human experience. Part of the challenge is that we have had all of this stuff filtered through 1900 years of other experiences and other agendas. When Jesus rose to prominence there, a lot of people were expecting him to be the warrior king that they had always wanted, and who would kick the Romans back to Italy and establish God's kingdom on earth. So when Jesus gets essentially framed and murdered, they were trying to explain what happened. And suddenly these traditions started to come together of Jesus as Messiah, the Savior. The idea of, from the old Jewish and pagan traditions, of that when you wanted to please the gods, you had to sacrifice your animal. In fact, the best animal that you had. And then there was the other tradition of when a country was conquered, rather than wiping out all the people, the conquering people would generally kill the king. And all of those things kind of merged together into this mainstream Christian idea that Jesus died for our sins. And the Bible that we have now was compiled at the Council of Nicaea in the year 325, when Constantine decided he was going to make Christianity the Roman Empire's official religion. But it was practiced so differently all over the known world at the time around the Mediterranean that he pulled all of these bishops together for a whole summer, twisted a lot of arms, made sure that the prophets could no longer stand up and say that the emperor was doing evil in the sight of the Lord. And we came up with these various traditions, the Trinity, that there's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Here, last week I talked about the Trinity of Trinities. So for us, the salvation that Jesus brought us was the freedom from ignorance, lack, limitation, the ability to recognize that we can live our life to the fullest. We can have wholeness in our life, abundance, peace, fulfillment. See here, next question is, asking for financial prosperity a good thing to do? Wasn't Jesus angry at the people in the temple for selling things? Well, here again, one of the challenges we're dealing with is that in the Middle Ages, the clergy were paid to convince people that it was fine to be poor. And so we've had to kind of live with that. But when you really do go back and look at what Jesus taught, I mean, the Gospel of John, 10th chapter, 10th verse, I came that ye all may have life and have it more abundantly. As we do explain, though, in our prosperity classes, our prosperity books, it's not a matter of coveting opulent wealth. It's a matter of having your needs met, your obligations fulfilled, and your desires demonstrated. Question, why don't you do your classes by Skype? Well, I've considered that, but there's been some very interesting studies that are out lately now that this has been done for a number of years. They're finding that people who do the distance learning, the Skype, that the teaching is not nearly as effective as being in the room with the person. And I know we're discovering this at Unity Seminary too, as they made more and more courses available to people that way. That there's something very powerful about being in the room as a group of people and learning from each other. How would you describe unity to someone else? Well, here in 2 weeks we're going to have Bring Your Friends Sunday. The quickest thing I can say to you is just describe what you experience here. Why do you come? What did you discover when you discovered unity? Why are you excited about it? If you're looking for help in how to language that, I know at the annual meeting we passed out this thing called the Unity Brand Identity Map, and I put some of them out by my office. It basically, when Unity did research on how do we describe ourselves to people in languages that they understand, they came up with various sentences and phrases that describe us so that, so that we're not talking in our own jargon, so to speak. How do we show more love to the community and to each other? Well, reach out to each other, be inclusive with each other, and fight the temptation to gossip. I've got to admit, I've been a bit shocked at the energy around gossip here. I know one of my classmates, had a similar situation at a congregation in Wisconsin. It's really important that when you hear something that you check it out or bring it to someone. Just look in January when suddenly this rumor starts floating around that Carla and I are about to be fired by the Board of Trustees. It wasn't true, yet, we had several people say to us, we just can't handle that kind of drama, we're not going to come anymore. And indeed, attendance went down by about 25 or 30 people Sunday. So, that's the kind of thing that can happen from gossip. Like Mark Twain said, a lie makes its way halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. But, if somebody had just called me or called a member of the board at the time, we could have straightened it out. So yeah, just treat others as you would like to be treated. How's the church doing financially? Well, revenues are down about $25,000 over this time last year. Certainly could be better. It's not where I'd like it to be. One thing, though, that has astounded me is that we don't seem to have people taking advantage of the Scripps program or the Energizing Indiana program. The Scripps program is where merchants and online retailers will actually make a donation to the church as a percentage of whatever it is that you spend there. Say you go purchase things at, say, Meijer store, they'll give 3% to Unity, provided you use the special gift card. I know we've got instruction sheets in the friendship room, and we've got it on our website under the donation tab. You see Scripts for free there. The Energizing Indiana program, where people, they'll come to your house, give you a chance to, they'll inspect your house just to see if there are ways you can save energy. I mean, there's no obligation, no cost to you, but if you tell them that Unity of Indianapolis indeed sent you, or asked you to call them, they'll give us $25. I mean, these are very easy ways to, just to increase the revenues of the church. And so far I'm not seeing a lot of enthusiasm about it. Now the good news is that we know the prosperity principles. Even when things appear to be bleak, they always work out. Last year we received a financial gift that has allowed us, to pay all of the bills on time. Allowed us to finally finish completing the roofing project here just this last week, and to replace the air conditioning in the Friendship Hall, which is just gasping along right now. So they'll be in to finish that next week now that we've made room on the roof for them. These things are, so I guess the main thing is to just embrace the prosperity principles. Know that all needs are met, obligations fulfilled, and desires demonstrated. What are yours and Carla's concerns? Well, it's an interesting time of the year. Usually during the summer, we check in with our teams, our volunteers, see if they want to, shift duties, do something else within the church. So right now, we're just looking for people to step up in a number of ways. So, like I said, the audio team, the hospitality team, making coffee and cleaning up afterwards. But there is a lull in the energy of Unity of Indianapolis right now. Part of that is by design. I know last year we had our regional consultant, Marty Newman, come in, and she did an all-day seminar on a concept called polarities, recognizing that things don't necessarily need to be in opposition to each other. But one of the things we talked about is that sometimes there's a time to rest and a time to, or a time to put forth a lot of energy, a time to sow, a time to reap. This congregation has been through a lot. And so Carla and I have now been here 3 years, and I specifically kind of held back because we knew that we were going to need 3 years to build your trust, allow Unity of Indianapolis to grieve its past, and to move forward. This is the 100th anniversary of Unity of Indianapolis. So this fall, we're going to redefine who we are. We're going to have a big birthday party for ourselves, but we're also going to spend like a whole Saturday. And as soon as we get the arrangements finalized, we're going to have you come in and help us establish who are we? What do we do well? What do we want to prioritize, do as a community? What do we want to empower? So we'll have someone come in and kind of lead us through coming up with a new vision statement, a mission statement, find out what our core values are. So when you see the announcements of that, please consider just setting aside that Saturday to come and kind of work with us to brainstorm and really get a sense of who we are so that we can start to channel the energy all in the same direction. I really want to see this church grow. How can we do that? Well, number one, get involved. We've got the 4T program, tithing of your time, your talent, and your treasure. So volunteer somehow. Volunteer your talent, either here or somewhere else. Tithe of your time. Spend some time each day contemplating God. And then, of course, your talent, just being willing to, your treasure, being willing to, to give whatever it is you're guided to give. But the single most effective way of having a congregation grow in numbers, in revenues, and in consciousness is word of mouth. You being willing to talk to other people about Unity of Indianapolis and invite them. I'd love to see you invite people on any Sunday, but we decided let's get organized about doing it on a particular Sunday. So that's what we're doing on July 20th. So just kind of work on your own elevator speech. Like I said, what does unity mean to you? What about you, Bob? Where do you want to see Unity 5 years from now? Well, I know Carla and I shared our goals with the Board of Trustees. Like I said, I'd like to, as a group, set some goals here this fall so that the board could come up with a strategic plan for 2015 based on our consensus as a community. But for me, I'd like to see, let's say 52 weeks from now, that should be July 5th of next year, average attendance on Sundays, 300 people. I'd like to see annual revenues of at least $450,000. I'd like to see this place be a beacon of light for people to come to learn the spiritual principles. That's why we do offer classes on Mondays and Wednesday nights, and we offer support groups and other wonderful resources the rest of the week, including our Monday evening meditations. We're a spiritual family. It's important for us to minister to each other. You know, as we were talking about a little bit before, seeing horrible things happen, you know, on the TV. Well, what about helping someone that you can help? We can be kind of a surrogate family to each other. I can't be there to hug, say, my sister and my parents right now, but I can hug each one of you here today. And when Carla and I were ill this week, you know, we had someone call and ask, you know, is there anything we can do? Bring stuff over. I mean, that kind of stuff. Just being willing to reach out to each other and help. Well, I'm going to close with a quote from Marianne Williamson. I remember sharing it very early after Carla and I started, and some members of the team that were going through resumes and trying to find out who they thought would be good candidates for ministry actually used this as one of their guidelines in finding a new minister. It's from Marianne Williamson from her book, A Return to Love. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, or fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give our other people in our lives permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace.